She thought fate meant one. The moon chose two. Twice marked. Chapter 1, The Night the Moon Changed Its Mind, 2000 Chars. Ruby Lane never minded midnight calls, but she minded the screaming. It bled across the snowline like wire, high and terrified, somewhere between a dog's cry and a woman's. She skidded her truck to the shoulder where the logging road knifed into the pines, grabbed her field kit, and ran. The body lay half in a drift, half on gravel, a wolf, huge and dark, breath shredding out invisible bursts. Blood slicked the fur at his ribs. Traps, she thought, fury snapping bright. Hey, easy, she said, voice steady from 1,000 wounded animal nights. I'm here to help. She palmed the sedative, the needle trembling because her hands were warm and the world was so damn cold. Amber eyes opened. Not animal, aware. The snarl was too human. Back, someone barked from the trees. Ruby spun. A man stepped out, all edges and winter, black hair whipped by wind, leather jacket, scar splitting his brow like lightning. Behind him, another man emerged, taller, calm where the first burned, sandy dark hair tied back, gaze like stormlight breaking open. Don't touch him, the first growled. He's dying, Ruby snapped. You can posture or you can help, pick one. The calm one moved first, palms open. I'm Erik. That's Jaxon. We're family, Jaxon cut in, eyes never leaving the wolf. And you're in our territory, sweetheart. Your territory needs better signage. Ruby knelt anyway. He's in shock. If I don't stabilize him. The wolf jerked, jaws snapping. Ruby's needle bit wrong, his teeth found her wrist. Pain tore up her arm, white and electric. Jaxon swore. Erik was already there, clamping pressure on the wound, his hands gentle steel. Breathe, Erik said. Ruby tried. The world pitched. Heat roared through her veins, too fast, too much. The wolf's gaze locked with hers, and for a heartbeat the forest tilted. Her pulse synchronized with something not hers, the air sweet as first rain, terrifying and right. Then everything went black. She woke to firelight and the sound of voices arguing like weather. Stone walls. A long room that smelled of smoke, pine, and mail. Her wrist had been bandaged neatly, beneath the gauze a throb answered the fire's crackle like a drum. Jaxon sat in the doorway, shadow and bone and a mouth made for trouble. Erik poured tea as if midnight rescues were polite social calls. The dying wolf was nowhere. You bit a royal, Jaxon said, as if she'd kicked a crown. Ruby blinked. He bit me. Semantics, Jaxon muttered. Erik's eyes softened. You're safe, Ruby. Safe? She tried to sit. The room slid sideways, then locked into place. Where am I? Our lodge, Erik said. Our pack. Ruby laughed once, a ragged sound. Pack. Right. Are you going to tell me I hallucinated a wolf that looked me in the eye and made me hear the moon, Jaxon said flatly. Yeah. You didn't hallucinate. Erik crouched, steam from the mug feathering his jaw. There's no easy way to say this. The bite took. You're changing. Into us, Jaxon finished. Wolves. Ruby stared at her bandage. Heat rolled under the gauze like a secret. No. Yeah, Jaxon said. I hate it too. Erik's gaze held hers, honest as a pulse. There's more. When you opened your eyes, every tether in this place snapped tight. He swallowed. To you. Jackson's jaw flexed. You smell like me. And me, Erik said quietly. Ruby's laugh died. That's not a thing. It isn't, Jaxon said. Except when it is. Erik's voice gentled. We think the moon chose you, Ruby. Twice. Chapter 2, A Room with Two Wolves, and a Truth She Didn't Ask For, 2000 Chars. Ruby's brain did the sensible thing and tried to leave her body. The rest of her, less rational, noticed stupid details. Erik's tea smelled like mint and smoke. Jaxon's boot tapped a rhythm that wasn't patience. Beyond the door, the night breathed, slow and animal. Chosen, she repeated. Like, mates? The word felt illicit in her mouth. Erik's throat worked. Fated bonds are rare. They're singular. Not anymore, Jaxon said, like an accusation aimed at the sky. Ruby forced her spine straight. I don't believe in fate. Neither do I, Jaxon said. Fate believes in us anyway. Erik set the tea on the table between them. This lodge sits between rival packs, Jackson's Ridge, my valley. We keep a truce that barely deserves the name. He studied her bandage. When you were bitten, something old woke up and changed the rules. Old? Ruby asked. Jackson's gaze flicked to the fire. Tribons. Stories you tell pups to keep them from wandering. One soul called by three. It never happens. His mouth crooked. Until you. The room felt too small. So your magic moon decided I should belong to both of you? You don't get to pick me. I pick me. Good, Erik said, relief a quick flash. You should. Jackson's eyes raised to hers, amber hitting like heat. You think we want this? He asked, voice rough. I buried someone I loved. I don't kneel when the sky says kneel. He dragged a hand through his hair. And yet when you walked in, my wolf shut the hell up for the first time in 2 years. Erik's smile was a bruised thing. Mine started talking at all. Something in Ruby's chest unclenched, a tenderness she hadn't budgeted for. What was wrong with him? She asked, nodding to the bitten wolf. Alive, Jaxon said. Thanks to you. After a beat, he's my cousin. And the bite? Jackson's expression went predator still. Trapline. Poachers. We got sloppy. Erik's gaze softened. You saved him. Even after he hurt you. I don't do tally sheets, Ruby said. Then the floor tilted again, the heat in her blood spiking. She clutched her wrist. What is this? Erik was already at her side, palms hovering. Shift fever. Your body's listening to a new language. Jaxon stood abruptly, the chair leg scraping stone. It's too soon to train her. It'll be worse if we wait, Erik said gently. To Ruby, breathe lower. Ribs. Not chest. Stop telling me how to. Ruby broke off on a gasp, the air catching, bones aching in strange, bright lines. Panic flared hard enough to salt her tongue. Jaxon moved before she asked, fast and infuriatingly tender, a palm braced near her shoulder without touching. Look at me, he said, voice low. Listen for the stove's tick. Count it. 9. 8. 7. Erik's voice threaded under his. Remember the cold creek by the road? The sound. The way it cut the world clean. Ruby latched onto both, Jackson's countdown, Erik's river. Her lungs found an old rhythm under a new sky. The pain ebbed to a wrecked hum. She blinked. They hadn't touched her, not really. They'd held the edge anyway. Thanks, she managed. Jaxon stepped back so fast it stung. Don't thank me. Erik's half-smile held. Do thank me. I like it. Ruby almost laughed. This is insane. Accurate, Jaxon said. Erik's gaze was careful. We can help you through this. Learn your shifts. Learn us. No one's asking you to decide anything tonight. Tomorrow doesn't look promising either, she muttered. Jackson's eyes flared, then flattened. Sleep. We'll stand watch. Ruby nearly argued. Then the fever rolled again, gentle this time, a tide she could ride if she didn't fight the moon for the wheel. Fine, she said, retreating to the cot by the hearth. But if I wake up with a collar, I burn your house down. Jackson's mouth flashed, Wolf amused. I like her. Same, Erik said softly, and Ruby's traitor heart took notes. Chapter 3, First Shift, First Lie. She dreamed of running. Not the clumsy thud of boots on snow, but the rightness of pads, the shock of cold starlight in her lungs. When she woke, the dream had left a map under her skin. She was hungry enough to chew the horizon. She was also naked under a blanket and deeply aware of 2 male heartbeats in the room. You changed, Erik said, not moving from the chair where he'd fallen asleep sitting up. Dawn washed him pale. Jaxon loomed at the window, a statue that had learned to scowl. Ruby swallowed. I don't remember. Jackson's voice came rough. You went quiet. Clean shift. Lucky. Lucky, she repeated. You didn't break anything you'll miss, he said. Erik stood and offered a neatly folded bundle. Clothes. Also coffee. You're going to hate it and love it. I always do both, Ruby muttered, and fled to the washroom. Her face in the mirror looked like hers until the light caught her pupils. They opened too wide, then narrowed to a gold ring, a secret threaded into her gaze. She inhaled and almost moaned at the smell, pine, smoke, winter, male. Jaxon smelled like danger forgiving itself, Erik like promises kept. She pressed her palms to the sink and scolded her reflection. No. When she came back, they both straightened like a room does when weather changes. She pretended not to notice, sipped hellishly good coffee, and lied for the last time. I'm fine. They didn't call her on it. They looked like men who'd learned that sometimes you let someone keep their smallest shields. Next, Jaxon said, we teach you not to get dead. Erik's brows lifted. We start with breath work. Breath doesn't stop bullets. Bullets don't care how hard you glower. Ruby held up a hand. Pause the testosterone Olympics. What happens to me if I walk out of here? Hunters smell new wolves like smoke, Jaxon said. And some packs would use you. Use me how? She asked, though she already knew the taste of power when she smelled it. Leverage, Erik said quietly. A tribond ties territories whether anyone likes it or not. People who loved our truce last will try to break you to break us. Ruby's jaw tightened. I'm not breakable. Jackson's gaze flicked to her mouth, then away. I know. Erik reached for her empty cup. Their fingers brushed. The world snapped for a second, bright and hot, her pulse leaping to match his. Erik sucked in breath like he'd touched live wire. Across the room, Jackson's head came up, a low sound in his chest so old Ruby felt it in her bones. No, Jaxon said softly, to himself or the moon. Mine. Ours, Erik corrected, gentle and firm. If she wants it. Ruby set the cup down with care, because her hands believed in physics even if the rest of her didn't. Ground rules, she said, voice steadier than her blood. I'm not a prize. I'm not a bridge. I'm not a cure. I'm Ruby. I make my own choices. Good, Erik said, relief flickering. That's the only way this works. And if I choose neither, she added, because the girl she'd been yesterday still wanted to be heard. Jackson's eyes warmed in a way that was somehow more dangerous. Then we keep you alive anyway. Outside, a horn sounded, 3 notes, the shape of alarm. Jaxon and Erik went still together, predator alert, a matched set. Ruby's wolf rose inside her like a drawn breath. Hunters, Jaxon said. Or worse, Erik murmured. Stay behind us. Ruby's mouth answered before her fear could. Like hell. Chapter 4, Teeth in the Snow. Snow broke under their boots as they hit the yard. Wolves loped along the fence line, hackles up, breath steaming. The horn sounded again from the north ridge. Smoke snaked through the trees where smoke shouldn't be. Poachers took the south line yesterday, a sentry called. Set iron along the creek. Of course they did, Jaxon growled, already moving. Erik, east flank. Ruby. With me, she said, and sprinted. Jaxon swore, then followed, because some instincts outrank orders. They tore along the path, Ruby's body singing a rightness she couldn't have earned. She could hear the creak before they reached it, could taste metal on the air. The first trap lay half under snow, jaws wicked. The second held a fox, muzzle flecked with blood, eyes wild. The third, Ruby's heart jammed, had been triggered by boot, not paw. A man lay twisted, leg mangled, torch guttering in the slush. Not a poacher. A young guard in Thorn Ridge colors. Barely grown. He blinked up when their shadows fell over him, shock making him calm. Alpha, he breathed, eyes on Jaxon. Don't call me that, Jaxon muttered, but he was already dropping to a knee, hands gentle. Hold him. I've got him, Ruby said, kneeling opposite, kid open in a blink. The trap's teeth were cruel and old. She wrapped a tourniquet, braced the hinge, and met Jackson's eyes. On 3. 1. 2. They wrenched the jaws apart. The guard screamed once, then bit it off, pried a sharp scent. Ruby packed the wound, fingers sure, voice steady. Good, she murmured. You're going to keep your leg. Erik's whistle cut through the trees, 2 notes. Incoming. Ruby looked up in time to see 3 men in white camo ghost between trunks, rifles held too easily. Behind me, Jaxon snapped. Ruby rose instead. Drop the guns, she called. He needs a medic. The lead hunter smiled like a cut. We came for wolves. Looks like we found 3. Bad math, Jaxon said, and moved. The fight was ugly. Erik hit the flank, a quiet storm, Jaxon broke the lead like he'd been made for it. Ruby grabbed the rifle that skittered near her boot, checked the safety, and slammed the stock into the second man's jaw before he could aim at Jackson's back. The third fired wild, bark exploded near her head. She didn't think. She changed. The shift rushed her like a tide. Bone, breath, fur, then ground there, close, clean. Sound sharpened into threads she could catch, Jaxon's snarl, Erik's pant, the guard's quick, shallow breaths. Ruby leapt, teeth flashing, took the shooter down in a tumble of snow and leaves. He fled, and she let him, because the boy still bled. She shifted back shaking, dropped to her knees, and pressed her hands to the guard's leg. Jaxon and Erik were suddenly there, one on each side, palms hovering, bodies making a wall she didn't want and loved anyway. When the bleeding slowed, the world ventured back. Ruby sat back on her heels, hair wet with snow, chest heaving. Jaxon looked at her like a prayer that expected no answer and got one anyway. You're hell, he said softly. Erik's smile flashed, bright and aching. She's ours kind of hell. Ruby exhaled a laugh that was mostly relief. Don't start with the ours. Jackson's eyes didn't dim. Too late. They hauled the boy up together. Ruby's wrist throbbed under the bandage, an old promise in a new world. The guard stared at her with a reverence that made her want to hide. Lady, he whispered, because he didn't have a better word for salvation in female form. Ruby, she corrected. Try not to put your foot in bear traps. It's a bad hobby. He choked a laugh, then hissed as pain bit. Jaxon scooped him like he weighed less than regret. Erik fell into step. Ruby matched them, shoulder brushing them both, the bond humming a low chord that made the snow look less like winter and more like light. Chapter 5, The Rule They Refused to Break. They got the boy home and into a bed near the hearth. Ruby checked the dressing twice, then a third time because care is a language and she was fluent. When she straightened, the room had emptied. Only Jaxon and Erik remained, watching her with that unbearable, steady attention. What, she said, too tired for performance. Erik's grin came slow. You saved us and told a trap to mind its manners. It's attractive. Jackson's mouth did that crooked thing that wasn't a smile and wasn't not. You shifted in a fight and didn't lose yourself. Most wolves don't do that on their first week. He looked away, jaw tight. I don't like needing anyone. I don't know how to like it. Then let's call it something else, Ruby said, and surprised herself by stepping into him first. Call it gravity. Her palm landed on his chest, heat under leather. He went very still. Erik leaned in on her other side, gentler, a tide taking shore. We made a rule while you were sleeping, he murmured, mouth near her ear. No pressure. No forcing. No claiming that ignores your will. Jackson's breath ghosted her hair. No hurting you to make room for us. Ruby's heart stuttered in a rhythm that matched two others. And if my will is inconvenient? Erik's laugh was a breath. Then we will be very patient and maybe a little stupid. She turned her face and kissed him first, because he'd asked so carefully. Erik's hand found her hip like he'd been born for it, the kiss deepening until words dissolved. Jaxon made a sound that would have been jealousy if it had any softness in it. It didn't. It was something older. Ruby broke from Erik and faced Jaxon, breathless. Your turn, she said, and watched the shock hit him like a wave. He didn't move for a heartbeat. Then he did, mouth hard, kiss honest, heat and grief and surrender folded into one unpretty, unforgettable thing. She sighed into it and felt him shake. When she drew back, she was between them, hands fisted in two shirts, pulse a skylark. There, she said. Equal opportunity ruin. Jaxon swallowed. I'm not gentle. Erik's voice was a smile. I am. Ruby's answering smile was teeth. Lucky me. They didn't take her to bed. Not yet. They made soup and sat too close and spoke like men who'd been handed a fragile thing and were determined not to break it, even if their hands shook. Later, in the quiet between logs falling in the stove, Ruby lay awake and stared at the rafters, the ache in her blood a sweet, low thrum. I don't have to choose, she whispered into the dark, testing the words like a blade's balance. Her wolf lifted her head inside Ruby's chest and wagged, undignified, delighted. From his pallet near the door, Jaxon rasped, what was that? Talking to myself, she said. Erik's voice drifted, amused and sleepy. Did you win? Ruby thought of the creek, the fight, their mouths, the way the moon had changed its mind just for her. She smiled into the darkness that wasn't empty anymore. Yeah, she said. For once. Chapter 6, The Moon Writes in Threes. By the next full moon, Ruby could feel them before she saw them. Not with eyes, the bond had invented a new sense and installed it without asking. Jackson's mood approached like weather, Erik's like a melody she could hum. When she stepped into the clearing that night, both were already there, shirts off, winter kissing their skin, the fire painting their scars gold. This is ceremonial, Erik teased. We're very serious about our nudity. Speak for yourself, Jaxon said, watching Ruby as if she were the moon. I'm unserious about everything but her. Ruby's breath stuttered. If you two keep talking, I'm going to trip over something on purpose. Erik's eyes warmed. Then let us catch you. She stood between them, palms up. Ground rules, again, she said softly, because repetition is how you teach bodies to trust. No jealousy. Jealousy isn't the enemy, Jaxon said. Lying to it is. Then we tell the truth when it comes, Erik finished, because of course he did. Ruby inhaled. The moon poured down. The shift took them in the same breath, bones singing, sinew rewriting, three wolves where three humans had stood, bodies circling, noses bumping, a shuffle of paws that made the night feel wider. Ruby pressed her shoulder to Jackson's dark flank, nipped at Erik's pale ear, and felt home as a sensation, not an address. They ran until the cold was a theory. They returned to skin with laughter caught in their throats and lay on their backs watching breath cloud. Jackson's hand found Ruby's. Erik's found her other. The bond hummed. No one will understand this, Jaxon said. We don't need them to, Ruby replied. Erik turned his head, smile small and amazed. Then we make our own pack. Ruby squeezed both hands until 3 pulses matched. We just did. Chapter 7, What We Defend. The trouble started as most trouble does, small and mean. A rusted pickup parked at the far gate, engine idling like a dare. Two men and a woman in winter camo leaned on the hood, pretending to smoke while they mapped the lodge with their eyes. Not poachers. Not exactly. Wolves in human skins from the ridge beyond Jackson's line, wearing the slouch of people who'd decided your house was their shortcut. Ruby clocked them from the porch, coffee steaming in one hand, pulse steady. Behind her, the door breathed open and Jackson's heat found the cold, the bond snapping tight as a cinch. Company, he growled, already rolling his shoulders like violence was a coat he'd kept ready. Erik's step was softer, a note under a drum. He joined them, gaze quick and assessing. "Thorn breakers," he murmured. "They've been testing fences all winter." "Testing what happens when they touch what's ours," Jaxon corrected, eyes on Ruby because he wanted to say it to her first. Ruby didn't look away. "Then we teach them." They walked down together, three across, the kind of line you only make if you trust the bodies on either side to be exactly where they should be when the air goes loud. The woman flicked her cigarette into the snow. "Cute," she drawled. "A greeting committee and a pet." Jackson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Say that again." She shifted her weight, lazy. "You heard me, Alpha. Tribons make a pack greedy. Thought we'd take some pressure off your pantry." Her glance slid to Ruby, a measuring that felt like hands. "Offer simple. You give us the girl. We don't take your fence." Erik's laugh was not kind. "You've mistaken we for a word that includes you." The woman's mouth curled. "You've made a mistake louder. The moon doesn't give two mates to one. That's not a blessing. That's a backlog error." Jaxon moved a half step forward. "Last chance to drive away unhurt. Last chance to learn your math." She nodded. Men uncoiled from the back of the truck like bad ideas, 5, then 7, then 9. Too many for a polite conversation. Ruby set her cup on a fence post and rolled her shoulders. Heat slithered under her skin in bright threads, fear's sibling, called ready. "No guns," she said. "We keep this clean." "We aren't the ones who brought a pet," the woman repeated, and reached for a knife she shouldn't have. Jaxon was there first, no flourish, just angle and speed. He caught the woman's wrist, turned it, made the knife the snow's problem. Two men lunged for Ruby. Erik drifted into their path like weather, redirecting one with the kind of elegance that looked like luck until it kept happening. The other got a fistful of Ruby's jacket and a mouthful of her headbutt, then learned that snow could be introduced to teeth very quickly. The fight cracked open, white flurries, dark coats, the thud of choices. Ruby shifted mid-step and hit a man low, the old camber of her new body clean and vicious. She felt Jackson's snarl like thunder behind her, Erik's exhale like a metronome keeping her honest. A blade kissed her hip, the wolf spun and put its owner down without discussion. It ended before breath did. The breakers limped, not dead. Ruby had opinions about sending messages you could outlive. Jaxon tossed the woman's knife into the truck bed, expression bored enough to be terrifying. Erik wiped his knuckles on the snow, then looked up at the three gawkers who had thought they were an army and now knew they were wrong. "You come back," he said evenly, "you leave pieces." The woman spat pink. "You think the council will let this stand?" Jaxon leaned on the fender like a wolf learning how chairs work. "Which council? The one that's dying, or the one that lives in our hands?" She sneered, but there was calculus behind it now. They piled into the truck. Tires spun, caught, fled. Silence pressed in, full of heartbeat and winter. Ruby swayed, sudden afterlight making her knees take stock. Jackson's palm hovered an inch from her back, an instinct and a promise, never a leash. Erik's hand found her hip where the blade had liked her too much. "Blood," he said, voice narrowing with focus. "It's a scratch," she replied, already laughing the way adrenaline makes you bold. "You should see the other 9. Jackson's mouth did the traitorous soft tilt. "We did. From several angles." Erik's thumb brushed the cut, the gentleness almost worse than any wound. "Inside?" he asked, because he'd learned her tells. "I'm okay," she said, and then, because the new world had made her greedy for the right words, "I'm okay because you were both there." Jackson's eyes darkened, "Not lust, the thing deeper that feeds it. We keep it that way." "Which means rules," Erik added, because he was Constitution where Jaxon was Declaration. "No solo patrols. We run in threes until breakers get bored." "And, Ruby?" "No jumping into trucks to make speeches," Jaxon finished, shuddering at the possibility he was secretly in love with. Ruby bumped his shoulder with hers. "You like my speeches?" "Your speeches are foreplay," he said, deadpan. Erik coughed, laughing. "Noted." They walked back up the path, shoulders brushing, the bond humming a satisfied chord. Halfway to the porch, Jaxon slowed, jaw working like a man tasting a word he hadn't wanted to say out loud. "I lost somebody," he said, staring at the tree line. "Before you." "She died because I hesitated, to call, to run, to admit I needed anyone. Today, when they came for you, I didn't think. I went. That's the difference. That's the rule." Ruby's hand found his. "We don't hesitate." Erik covered both their hands with his own, warm, sure. "We don't lie about the fear, either. And we don't give me to anyone," Ruby added. Jackson's mouth sharpened. "They can try to take pieces. We've got extras." "Charming," Erik said dryly. "Effective," Ruby countered, and kissed them both on the porch where everyone could see, quick for the crowd, longer for the part of the world that had always told her to have herself for the sake of someone else's comfort. Inside, the stove ticked like a clock that only kept the time they chose. Outside, snow began again, soft, relentless, the shape of a future laid down flake by flake. Chapter 8, The Long Night of Truth. They slept badly and together, the kind of heap that made mockery of geometry, Ruby in the middle with a thigh over Jackson's hip, Erik curved at her back, an arm draped across both like a promise-made muscle. Wind pawed the shutters. Somewhere a plank in the roof remembered winter and complained. When the stove sighed itself thin, Jaxon got up without waking either of them and fed it like a penitent. Ruby stirred anyway. "You okay?" she mumbled, voice fuzzy. "Always," he lied, too quickly. She nudged the lie with her toes. "Try again." He huffed, the sound small in the big dark. "I keep replaying the way that woman looked at you. Like you were a handle on a door she wanted through." He sat on the edge of the bed and scrubbed a hand over his face. "I spent 2 years hurting because I wouldn't admit I could lose someone. Then the moon delivers you, and asks me to learn in public." Ruby pushed up, blanket pooling at her waist. "Then don't learn alone." She reached for him. He let her pull him back, let her lay his head on her chest like she could talk a growl into a purr. Her fingers traced his scar, slow, patient. "We made a rule. No hesitating. No lying about fear. You don't have to be the wall. You just have to stand next to me when I am." The mattress dipped behind her. Erik's breath warmed her neck. "She's right," he murmured. "And if we're counting confessions," he hesitated, then let the words out like a held-in tide. "I walked away from a pack once. Beta to a man who wanted war more than winter stores. He called it strength. I called it a grave dug in advance. My brother stayed. He didn't survive the thaw." Silence after, bare and clean. "I promised myself never again. Then you happened, Ruby. And Jaxon. And suddenly never again was just fear dressed nice." Ruby rolled to face him, cupping his jaw. "You didn't abandon anyone. You refused to be a weapon. That's different." Erik's smile was crooked and young for a heartbeat. "It feels different now." Jaxon shifted up on an elbow, mouth stubborn and soft at once. "Let's make it simple." He took Ruby's hand and set it on his chest. He took Erik's and set it over his own. Then he put his palm over both. We're not halves competing. We're thirds refusing subtraction. Erik's fingers tightened. No jealousy that festers. If it shows up, we say its name and feed it truth. Ruby breathed them in: smoke, pine, salt, the specific sweetness that was theirs only when all three were here. And no leaving. Not to protect. Not to punish. Not to prove a point. Jaxon nodded, solemn as a rite. No leaving. Erik sealed it with a kiss to Ruby's temple, then, after a brief, startled blink from Jaxon, to Jackson's brow, too. Something eased in the room, an old hinge oiled. Ruby laughed, quiet and a little wrecked, and pulled them both down until the world disappeared beneath their weight. They didn't make love, they made time, slow, layered, a weave of mouths and hands and breath where no one rushed to the ending. When heat finally crested and broke, it felt less like conquest and more like arriving home during a storm and finding the fire still alive. Dawn pried at the shutters. Snow had stopped. The stove ticked in satisfaction. Ruby dozed between them, bone-deep contentment purring, until the hawk hit the window with a measured tap-tap-tap. Erik was up first, bare feet silent on cold boards. He unlatched the sash. The bird hopped to the sill, leg bound with braided black cord and a wax seal Ruby didn't recognize. A circle ringed by thorns. Jackson's mouth went thin. Council mark. The old men found their spines. Erik slid the parchment free and read fast, eyes shadowing. By decree of the border conclave, the tribound female is to be surrendered for judgment at first dark. Failure will constitute rebellion. Breaker escort en route. Ruby sat up, heat retreating before a colder fire. They think they can summon me? They think they can cage what they don't understand, Jaxon said, already moving: boots, knife, jacket, the ordinary armor of a man who had made a life of refusing to be owned. Erik folded the summons once, then again, tucked it into the stove with a lifted brow. The seal curled, blackened, and split with a tiny sigh. Then we show them, he said evenly, what a choice looks like when it doesn't ask permission. Chapter 9: The Call to the Moon. The summons burned to ash in Erik's hand, but the scent of the council's arrogance clung to the air. Outside, the sky was already turning that strange pewter shade that meant a storm, or something worse, was coming. Ruby stood by the window, fingers tracing the frost lacing the glass. Her reflection stared back, pale skin, eyes gone gold, hair unkempt from sleep and battle. A woman reborn, remade, and tired of other people deciding what she was allowed to be. They'll come before dark, she said. The conclave doesn't send warnings without teeth. They'll bring hunters, Jaxon said, pacing like a caged storm. And priests to bless their cruelty. Erik's calm was a blade's edge. They think we'll surrender you. Or worse, they think you'll surrender yourself. Ruby turned, firelight carving her cheekbones sharp. They don't understand what they're dealing with. I'm not a prophecy. I'm a person. Exactly, Jaxon growled. And they hate that. Erik came to her side, palm brushing her back. We'll stand our ground. They want a trial, they'll get one, but under the moon, not their torches. Ruby's pulse jumped. You're suggesting a challenge, Jaxon said, wolf-quick. The oldest law. They call us heretics? Fine. Let the moon decide. Erik nodded. We'll invoke Lunis Judicium. If the bond is false, she'll break it. If it's true, she'll burn the liars where they stand, Jaxon finished. Ruby's wolf rose in her chest, thrumming with something ancient and electric. Fear twined with exhilaration. You're both insane. Probably, Jaxon said. But you're stuck with us. She smiled despite herself. Damn right I am. By dusk, the snow stopped pretending to be gentle. Wind howled through the valley like an audience impatient for blood. They built the circle in the clearing: stones, pine torches, salt. Old symbols carved by new hands. Erik worked quietly, precision his prayer. Jaxon prowled the perimeter, every motion promising violence. Ruby knelt in the center and let the bond hum through her bones. It wasn't calm, it wasn't peace. It was truth. The kind that didn't apologize. They'll come, Erik murmured. They already have, Jaxon said, nodding toward the dark. Figures emerged from the trees, hooded, armed, self-righteous. The conclave. 9 of them, the number of judgment. Behind them, the breakers. The air thickened with anticipation and contempt. Ruby Lane, the lead priest intoned, you stand accused of defying natural law. You've bound yourself to 2 wolves, corrupting the sacred order of the moon. Ruby rose slowly, the torches bowing their flames toward her. Maybe the moon's order was never yours to interpret. Blasphemy, the priest hissed. Truth, she countered. The man sneered. Then prove it. Jaxon stepped forward, eyes blazing gold. We will. Erik echoed him, voice steady. By Lunis Judicium. The moon decides. Gasps rippled through the ranks. The priest's smirk faltered. That right is forbidden. Only to cowards, Jaxon said. The sky split open with thunder. The moon climbed, full and bright, painting the snow in silver flame. Ruby lifted her chin. Let her judge. The bond pulsed, once, twice, then ignited. Light shot through her veins, through theirs, weaving 3 bodies into one rhythm. The torches guttered out. The wind died. The world held its breath. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then the moon spoke, not in words, but in certainty. 3 hearts. 1 truth. The circle exploded outward in a ring of blue-white fire, hurling the priests to their knees. Their blessings turned to ash. The breakers dropped their weapons, eyes wide with terror. Ruby stood untouched, hair lifted by the power rolling off her. Jaxon and Erik flanked her, wolves half-shifted, eyes burning gold and silver. The moon's light etched symbols onto their skin, 3 interlocking marks over their hearts. The priest's voice broke. Impossible. Ruby's voice was soft but vast. Not impossible. Just inconvenient. The light faded. The storm died. The conclave fled, leaving their arrogance trampled in snow. Ruby turned to the men who'd become her gravity. It's over. Until they remember how to hate again, Jaxon said, brushing her hair from her face. Then we'll remind them how to lose, Erik murmured. Ruby smiled, tired and fierce. Together. The moon hung above them, silent and smug, as if she'd known all along. Chapter 10, The Aftermath. They didn't rebuild the circle. They left it scorched, a reminder and a warning. By morning, word had already spread, of a tribond that had survived the moon's test, of the conclave shamed, of an alpha who'd shared his power and lived. Stories traveled faster than proof. But proof wasn't the point anymore. They spent the next week repairing the fence, tending wounds, teaching new wolves who came curious instead of afraid. Ruby found herself laughing more than sleeping. Jaxon cooked terribly. Erik pretended not to care that she teased him for it. One night, when the air smelled like thaw and promise, she stood on the porch watching the horizon bruise into dawn. Jaxon's arm slid around her from behind. Erik leaned against the post beside them, eyes on her. You regret it? Erik asked quietly. Ruby shook her head. Not a second. Jaxon kissed the back of her neck. Good. Because we're not giving you an out. Didn't ask for one. She looked up at the paling moon. I used to think love was supposed to make sense. Erik smiled. It never does. That's how you know it's real. The wind carried their laughter across the valley, the sound of something new finding its first breath. And somewhere far above, the moon turned her face toward the dawn, content to let the world get stranger. The end. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you loved this story. Subscribe if you want to hear each time I publish a new story.